Hey everyone, Rascal here.
And Mama, welcome to our podcast.
In today's podcast, we're covering the sequel to the Jumanji reboot, which is called Jumanji The Next Level.
Jumanji 2.
Yeah, you think just say Jumanji 2, but no.
In this sequel,
make it fancier.
Yes. In the sequel, the gang is back, but the game has changed, and as they return to rescue one of their own, the players have to brave parts unknown from arid deserts to snowy mountains to escape the world's most dangerous game.
Yes. And before we start, be sure to like, subscribe, and click notification bell to get updates on future podcasts and World of Paws videos.
Yes, and the entire cast return.
Yes.
Which is like an aberration.
Right. All the kids and the adults, well, the players, I should say, the little avatars for the game, all of them return. So, yeah.
And the addition of Danny DeVito and Danny Glover, Danny Squared.
Yes. So for here, as we said, the game has been altered. It's supposed to be, as the first movie left off, you thought it was just going to be just one movie as like a either threequel or sort of reboot. It was after the end of the first movie, if you've seen it, it was that was it. They weren't expecting that to happen. It was sort of like a modern day thing happening with Jumanji, because you know in the very first Jumanji movie it was a board game that sucked people into the game when they played it, and for here it's a video game,
right? And
they thought it was done when they finished the game the first time in the Welcome to the Jungle film, but in here it looked like the game was broken, I guess, so no one would do that again. But then they find out that one of them actually fixed the game and went back in it.
And even in the first movie, they rescued or helped Nick Jonas's character Seaplane to get out. He had been in there for decades. Mm-hmm. So yeah, he didn't think there would be any reason they would return to the game.
Right. So for here, also the shift has focused. It's it's still about the kids, but their character arcs for the most have been finished from the first movie. It really was more about
the Danny Squared.
Yeah, Danny Squared.
Eddie and Milo.
Right. And for their theme, it was sort of the theme of for Danny DeVito's character, he kind of had this rut where he didn't want to do anything, he felt that he was too old to do anything, and that was pretty much the whole character and what he was complaining about until he got into the game by accident, because the game for some reason took him and Danny Glover's character as well, I guess in place of the other kid who wasn't there, and put them in the game, and he ended up being Dwayne Johnson's avatar. So of course he was enjoying that.
Right, and Danny DeVito was the grandfather of the main player from the first game.
Right.
And Danny Glover was Danny DeVito's character Eddie's best friend Milo. Mm-hmm. We find out later that they owned a restaurant together, and they were best friends. Mm-hmm. And then they split up and lost contact, and more of that will be covered in the movie. Mm-hmm. But as we mentioned, the original stars returned: Dwayne Johnson, Kevin Hart, Jack Black, Karen Gillian, and Nick Jonas, as well as Karan Reese
Darby. Karan the game man.
And then we had the addition of the hilarious
Awkwafina, who's an all new avatar on there.
Right, she played me. And then you also had Bethany. They played Spencer's friends. You had Bethany and
Fridge.
Yes.
Yeah.
And so
yeah, they all returned as well.
They all ended up in this game. Mm-hmm. Somehow, I guess because they were at the wrong place at the wrong time. Right. The game sucked everybody into it.
Right. And they also had a new villain in here. Because the first one, you kind of know who the villain was until it got further in. The goal was just to get to the end of the game. But now for this one, it's been upgraded. So now they had a more deadly villain. And for the character that didn't have any weaknesses, the villain was his weakness because he was even bigger and stronger than Dwayne Johnson. Mm-hmm. That seems impossible, but it is, because he was the only character that could beat him up.
Right.
So they kind of had it more of like, they kept the tone of it being an adventure movie, but it has more comedy tones in here because, as we mentioned,
Awkwafina.
Yeah, Awkwafina was in here playing a new character. There was apparently a horse character you could play if you were human. Mm-hmm. I guess we ran out of human characters. And then Milo and Eddie, when they were sucked into here, they ended up being Bravestone and Moose.
Yes.
So, of course, the avatars had to take on the personality of the players. So, it was neat seeing them act like these other people after you've been so used to them acting like the other kids from the first movie.
And just like the first movie, they had riddles that each of them had to solve in order to achieve whatever the object or thing they were supposed to find or mission they were supposed to undertake. They had to figure out those riddles. But as you mentioned, in here they seem to be a little more danger than in the first one.
Right.
And somehow, which was kind of weird for me. Oh, that's right. Nick Jonas's character, Seaplane, one of the friends of Spencer actually went to him and said, "We need your help. They've been sucked back into the game." And he had this horrified look on his face, like, "I just got out of this mother, now I gotta sit here and do that." But he did it. You know,
right.
He was a good. You learned in the first movie he was a good guy. You thought he was a bad guy, but he wasn't. And he actually willingly went back into the game to help them.
Right.
And unlike in the game previously, where he had unlimited life because he'd been there forever, he ended up like the other players, only having three lives.
Right. And
which was weird for him.
Right. And for here, since the stars had to play different personalities of the characters, it might catch you off guard a little bit in the beginning because, like I said, Dwayne Johnson has to act like Danny DeVito, and Kevin Hart has to act like Danny Glover. So they both act differently. And then what's his name? Fridge ended up being in Jack Black, so he acted completely different. So it showed that the actors had like tons of range when they were supposed to be playing other people. But it will kind of be a little off because you've gotten really used to when the first film had them all acting like these kids, and like Jack Black acting like the girl because he's Antale, and that was like one of the funniest parts. And here the comedy's a little more different. It's not relying on the personality of the characters. It's more of them reacting to them having the new bodies. And like I said, Eddie loving that he's a giant Dwayne Johnson, giant young guy,
right.
And then
Danny Glover.
Yeah, Danny Glover. He was short.
He ends up in Kevin Hart's character.
Right.
Moose.
Yeah, and he keeps spouting out animal facts and things, and he takes him 5 minutes to answer a question. So it was more about that than them reacting to that, because it seemed like part of them were okay with it. It was just them reacting, still having the world issues in there. So the comedy has shifted a little bit until it gets further in when all the characters are back to the places you remember. So that kind of affected a little bit because some of the humor hit a lot different. It wasn't them like, this is dangerous, don't get killed off, and everything was out to get them and all of that, because there was the part of the humor was that they were everything was out to get them. They didn't know how to react. And here, the two of them are looking forward to it, so it was a whole different effect.
Right, and the two focus, as you mentioned, Danny Squared, they were, before they got into the game, they were talking about and upset about aging.
Yes.
And becoming elderly. And as you mentioned in here, they no longer were, and they were enjoying the experience of, youthful bodies and being young again and being mobile and not having aches and pains and different things. And that seemed to be the focus of this movie.
Yeah.
The movie was fun. The movie was great.
Absolutely.
But the first movie was like...
It was actually more of a family film if you think about it.
It was a family film, and it was just fun, and it was just about, as you say, getting out of the game and having the experience. In this one, these two men were running away from something they didn't want to face. And that's what it came about.
Yeah, it's an allegory.
Right, and then there's other factors that factor in. We don't want to give any spoilers, but you'll see how the ending all comes about. To me, it was a bittersweet ending. It was not what you expected, not what you desired, but it's the way the writers chose to end it. So, whereas the first movie was fun, hilarity, and experiences, and them just getting out of the game, and just
them reacting to everything.
Right. This one had a more somber tone.
Yeah.
You had your fun parts, you had your hilarious parts, you had your action parts, but the beginning starts off somber and it ends somber.
Yeah. And we also want to mention quickly that it is I don't think this is as much as a family film as the first one. Even with the first one, had a little bit of innuendo at the most, but there was really no cursing. They had, like I said, one innuendo, but it was used as a joke and nothing like, okay, your kids can't see this. It was just meant to be a fun family adventure and with character development. Here, they kind of shifted to be more towards an older audience.
From the beginning to the middle of the movie.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was all adult.
Right, because there was more swearing in the film, which the first one didn't really have. It was more sadder parts, as you said, running away from problems in reality.
And lots of sexual innuendo, and some just flat out blunt.
Right, so it was so odd to see that when the families could watch the first film.
So if this is something you took your kids to see the first time and they're younger, if they can understand the jokes or understand what's going on, you may not want them to see it.
Yeah.
However, as we mentioned, it turned out to be a great movie overall, different from the first, which is what you usually want. You don't want to see a duplication of the first movie.
Right.
It has some addition of new characters, great fantastic acting and comedic takes all around. So we definitely recommend that you see it.
Right.
Now, if you have seen Jumanji 2, we ask that you let us know what you think in the comments below. Did you have a favorite character? Were you happy with the outcome of the second movie? And if you haven't seen Jumanji 2, run the red box or on demand and give it a watch, because you'll be happy that you did.
And see if you would like to see if there will be a Jumanji 3.
Be interesting to see what the plot will be.
Right. So, thank you so much for watching. I'm Asking Entertainment.
I'm Entertainment, so don't forget to like, subscribe, and click notifications so you can be notified in case there is a Jumanji 3.
Right. And have a toontastic day.
Peace.
And reporters sitting flashing lights, trying to walk around, man, who the hell are you? What you wanna do? Well, man, it's on you. Man, it's on you. With her in my dreams, she was my queen. A castle in the mountaintops, rivers and streams. Plucking sunlight from the sky in my pocket, giving